I'm Dr. Anthony Harper here, blessed to be here in the Knesset with Knesset members. And your name and the party that you're with?
So my name is Gilad Alper, and the party I represent is Economic Freedom.
Okay. And we have a large Christian audience, and I know they're very interested in the politics here, the Knesset and the elections. So what is maybe the number one concern that you think that the message you want to share with Christian people about the elections, what's going on?
Okay, so I would say that the elections in Israel right now are pretty interesting because it's the fifth cycle we've had over the last 2.5 years. There's a stalemate in the economic landscape in Israel. So again, we're having an election now almost every 6 months, which obviously isn't good. And I hope that this is going to be the last cycle for the next few years. But I would say that overall, the number one problem that Israel faces is economic problem. The overall economy in Israel is simply not free enough. We have too much regulations. Imports aren't free. We're not as capitalistic as we could have been, which is obviously hurting Israel overall. And especially a country like Israel that needs a very large army, and the only way to finance a very large army is to have a very thriving economy overall. The only way to achieve that is to make the economy freer, as in simply much more free market capitalism than we have now. So our main target as a party is to advance freedom in Israel from the economic perspective and otherwise, but mostly from the economic perspective, to make the country more powerful.
Okay, well in America we have a huge deficit. In Israel, what's the situation for deficit?
So right now we're not suffering from a large deficit because over the last couple of years we've bounced back from the COVID lockdowns and all pretty quickly. Also, the high-tech industry in Israel is doing extremely well overall, but especially over the last couple of years. So we're doing well from that perspective. But we do have a very large national debt that we need to bring down.
Oh, okay.
The budget overall is too big, not so much in terms of the deficit right now, but in terms of the tax burden that's being put upon the Israeli citizenry. And we need to bring that down. So we just need to overall make Israel more prosperous. And again, the only way to achieve that is at least known to the human race, is through economic freedom.
I think about Russia a lot. Russia has been threatening Israel. I wonder about, because of the Russia-Ukraine thing, how that might be affecting the economy here. Or the elections.
Yeah, not so much. I think that so far we've managed to distance ourselves as much as possible from that conflict. We're obviously suffering from inflation like many other countries, but not that much, not as bad as the situation is in Europe or even the US. So look, it's not doing anything good to us, but it's not a huge disaster as far as we're concerned. It's obviously a huge disaster to the people of Ukraine, but Israel isn't suffering that much from that right now, at least.
Okay, for people that want to know more about you and your party, a website that you might have, and how they would find you on the internet.
Yeah, so the website for the party is freedom-party.co.il. That's pretty easy. If people want to look me up on Facebook, then it's Gilad Alper, my name in English and Hebrew.
I guess a finding I think about is the elections are very crucial in November and coming up. What is the likelihood that there would be a strong coalition government without any Arab and Knesset members involved?
I think that depends obviously it depends on the outcome of the elections. That kind of goes without saying. I think that if we do well, then our party, Economic Freedom, there's probably a higher chance of you know what, I'm not sure actually, because once the elections are over, there's just so many ways to put together the bits and pieces of the different parties that who knows. But look, at least right now, in Israel, people always say that elections are only about security and the geopolitical issues and the Arab-Palestinian conflict and all that. Over the past few years, I think there's been less and less talk about that in Israel and more about economic issues. And I think in these elections, maybe more than ever, this cycle I mean, there's almost, well, relatively speaking for Israel, almost no mention of geopolitics. It's really all about economics and the standard of living and the cost of living and all that, which is a bigger and bigger problem in Israel as it is also in other countries. So I'm not trying to deflect your question. I just don't have a good answer.
Right. So we basically have to wait till the election results, and then people can find out. They can work on a coalition with whatever makes the most sense to them. So.
Yeah, correct. So what we said is that we're indifferent between Netanyahu and the other candidates, Lapid and Gantz. I'm not sure your audience is even aware of those names, but the point is that we go with the coalition. We will go with the coalition that is willing to promote our agenda, the free market agenda, and we'll go with whoever promotes those issues. On the other issues, geopolitics, most of the candidates anyway are fairly close to each other.
I know it's a big issue for a lot of our Christian audience. They don't want any Arab Knesset members in the coalition government.
I would say that you need to probably be a little bit cautious about that. As long as you agree to democracy, as long as you agree to the principle of Israel as the state of, a Jewish state, a homeland for Jews, wherever they are, as long as you agree to that principle, that's fine. I mean,
here in Israel, it's a different concern than for American people.
Correct.
Looking in.
Correct.
But
correct.
So overall, we ask people to pray for the blessing of Israel, and a lot of people praying for Israel.
I know, and look, Israel overall is obviously extremely appreciative of the support we get from the Christian audience or the Christian crowd or demographics in the US, or anyone else who supports Israel. We obviously need support. I mean, that's pretty obvious.
Yes, and thank you for joining us to share your views about what's going on here in Israel. Here in the Knesset building, it's a blessing to be here, and so thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.